Welcome to the Holistic Wealth Podcast. I'm your host, Keisha Blair, wife, mother of 3, author of Holistic Wealth, and founder of the Institute on Holistic Wealth. The show will showcase various experts in the key pillars of holistic wealth. Each week, we deliver the best information on how to become holistically wealthy and live your best life. Today, we have a very special guest with us. We have Darick Spears, and Darick is a respected national speaker, inspiring entrepreneur, a critically acclaimed screenwriter, and author of over 100 books, which is just amazing. And he is an industry notable songwriter with titles having appeared on the Grammy ballad. Darick, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you, Keisha. I'm ecstatic to be here.
It's amazing, this topic that we're going to be discussing, the topic of the pay gap for Black creators, kind of delving deep into that. And it's such an important topic. And Darick, your creativity is unbelievable. Let's talk about this pay gap. What do you think are the reasons for this? What can we do about this? So let's start with why you think this pay gap exists.
I think it stems back from just a long way, from years ago, especially within the Black community and the Blacks, of our work being looked at maybe as subpar or looked at as not superior to maybe, over the years, our white counterparts or whatnot. And I think that a lot of times that fabric is woven inside of the industries that we go into, whether it be in the movie industry, maybe the music industry, for years and back in 50s, 60s, where the artists had hard time just even having their face on the cover, just be selling their own music, and so it was more like we get to this day and age, and it's like, yeah, it's increased in some ways, but we still don't get our just due. And I think that's why that still exists, because of the attitude in America still. I really look at it as, there are different ways to kind of close that gap. And I myself, being a creator, because when you create something, you want people to give you, what you value, your work to be. I first thought that, I've always been big on owning my work, or owning your work. Because when you own something, you're able to set your prices. You know what I mean? You're able to set it, your products, your services, your works, you're able to set that and control that. You know what I mean? Especially when you become a person of interest. When people look at a Tyler Perry and they're like, oh, they got to come to him with respect. He owns it. You got to come to him with respect. Like, okay, well, if I want this, hey, well, he owns it. So, and I think ownership in America for hundreds and hundreds of years, for centuries, is like we haven't owned a lot of things. And for us to own it, we're able to be stronger in the game.
No, for sure. And you mentioned something just at the outset in your response, and that's our work not given due attention and recognition and not seen as quite matching up, that's the perception, not that it is. And I have to make that very clear, because in a lot of ways, it's not the case. And so I wanted to get your views on that too, especially as a writer who's published over 100 books. And I mean, that in itself is just a feat. And you mentioned owning your own work. And I know you've self-published a lot of your books as well.
Yes.
Can you tell us about your experience with that?
Growing up, I always wanted to own everything. Like, I don't know if it stemmed from me having brothers and sisters that we had to fight for everything. And so as a writer, my notebook to me was my most valuable asset. Like, that's my words. That's everything that I embody. And it's my stories and words and this and that. So when I started publishing, I was like, I got to own all of my stuff. And I own my catalog. I just did the work. I was like, I want to own it, copyright it, trademark my business, all of this stuff. I was like, I want to make sure that it's mine. And sometimes in the beginning, you got to invest in yourself. You got to put a lot of money out to, trademark and get lawyers. You got to make sure that you're safe, because it's your work, and I looked at it as far as, you know, when you look at people who value, I was reading a Warren Buffett book, and when they buy something, they actually look 20 years down the line of how much it's going to be worth versus at that moment. So sometimes that's how they value things. And I was like, well, my works, I'm so confident that my works are going to be worth so much. I want to own it now. So I see, if I write a book, I see that 10 years from now, I'm going to turn it into a movie. That movie could be just as big as any movie out there. So if I want to own it, you know what I mean? I want to make sure that I see it that far out. Yeah. And that's why my whole catalog, I made sure I owned it because I wanted to be able to go into schools, which I do, go into schools, go into, you know, universities, even prisons, and be able to sell them my work, you know, directly from myself instead of somebody else coming and I represent you, or, you know, the fast mouth hustlers, and they take half of your money, you know, because they will. Some people will see your value that you don't see your own value. And, you know, like Mike Tyson lost a lot of money, you know, but his promoter, he was making a lot of money, you know. So it's people like those things, they'll see your talent and they'll make money off of you. And I was like, nah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to invest and I'm going to make money off my own self. So my writings were my products and my stocks and bonds. That's how I look at it.
So Darick, for those who are listening in and we're wondering, how do we close this pay gap? I mean, what are some personal strategies that Black creators can use? Like, you've written over 100 books. Like, should we be focusing on volume? And of course, the quality has to be there. Yeah. But I'm wondering, you know, to close the pay gap, it means that for individuals, you know, it means really taking it in your hands and really go above and beyond in terms of...
You do.
You know, in terms of your products and how you get that money in. So I would love to hear your experience with that.
When I first started out publishing books, and I want to also give advice for people out there who, if they are into book writing or anything, or, you know, buying your own ISBN numbers allows you to, you know, when you publish it, especially if you're going to self-publish, it allows you to be able to go anywhere with them. If you want to go sell them to a store in Europe or you can go anywhere with your own, you know, that's part of owning it. And what I looked at was the way to close the gap is, first of all, when you make whatever you do, whether it's music, whether it's film, whether knowing your work, you have to show your work as well. Sometimes you may have to give samples, this and that. Your work will speak for itself. Then you're able to ask. And I have one of my things is ask. Closed mouths don't get fed. A lot of times you have to be able to ask for the price that you are. I have a quote in my store that says, know your worth, then add tax. So being able to work smarter also and harder is you have to know that you can't miss any steps. You got to go through all the steps. I had to go through all the steps. And what I meant by that is sometimes people aren't going to tell you exactly what to go do. So I had to learn how to copyright. I had to learn how to trademark and then go into international trademark. And now I'm into international exporting, where I'm exporting books into different countries, you know, and, you know, I'm the seller. And the more books I had when I created my store, I was like, well, you know what? I want to have a book in every category they ask me. And the difference between my book and their book is me. So when you're selling yourself, most of the time people don't understand you're selling yourself a lot of times. First, if you're going into these buildings and you're building these relationships, you're selling yourself. So if they're like, okay, this is an entrepreneurship book, and we need one for our schools. Of course, there's other entrepreneurship books out there, but hey, I like Darick and I like when he comes in. I want to check out his entrepreneurship book, his perspective. So that's how I am still able to go into schools or areas and sell books, because I go in maybe and speak to students, talk to the principals, other people, and they get to know who I am. And then they're like, oh, well, I want to check out his, you know what I mean? So I think working harder and smarter and establishing yourself in your industry as a person, a likable person, or somebody who produces great work and returns emails and return phone calls. You got to do those little things too. You give respect, you get respect, your work quality speaks for itself, you're on time for meetings. You know, all those different things still work. And great entrepreneurs, they find out what the gap is. So sometimes there's something in there that you might find a problem in your industry and say, hey, well, I'm going to offer a solution. And by finding that solution, other people don't have that. You know, that solution that you have a unique spin on it, and then you're able to demand more money they say Angela Bassett is like the highest paid African-American woman now. And, you know, she's been around for many years, you know, and respected. When I hear her name, I automatically think respect, you know, so, but those are some of the things that I give advice to people that, you know, just because you have a good product in your eyes doesn't mean that someone else is going to value it that way.
You know, it's so amazing. Like I'm looking through some of your titles and it's unbelievable the depth and breadth of work that you have. And, you know, it just begs the question, Darick, like, how do you do this in terms of your level of productivity? You've managed to really set this bar so high in terms of your collections and over 15 genres of books, you know, in different categories and music. How can creators really manage their time effectively to be able to pump out a body of work that they can really earn from and benefit from? Because like we know as authors, right? Like you definitely need more than 1, 2, 3 titles. You need a backlog of work. You need a backlist so that, as you said, you know, once people get to know you and like your work, they can start just literally just buying your work and across different genres and across different interests and different age groups. So Darick, how can creators, manage their time and different strategies for pumping out this type of work?
I knew I got my gift from God, and I was very young, and I used to be the guy who always is writing. I never saw myself owning a store or whatever I have accomplished now. It was just like I started writing, and I loved to write, and I loved to do music. And I loved to when I first came I went to Marquette University as a freshman. I was in the theater class. I was the only Black kid in the theater major. And wow. So I was really into arts and the way I saw the world. And I just was like, I would always write on my notebook, century work. And I always told myself when I was young, I wanted to leave when I die a century worth of work. You know, like I wanted to be that guy he has so much works. But I have so many ideas and experiences that I went through in life. And a lot of times what inspires me is life. So I could be in a store and someone could just come up to me and say, hey, how you doing? So we can have a conversation. It just sparked an idea. And what I don't do is I don't allow boundaries in my work. So I dream without margins, you know, and I don't put margins in my work. I say, hey, I'm going to think of something and I'm just going to do it. A lot of times we get contaminated by other people's works. Yes. And I think you should stay in your lane and really focus on the talents you have and not be afraid. A lot of times I also help writers write and publish books. So I do ghostwriting and stuff for people. And so a lot of times they're scared. They don't want to put a book out. They're automatically, I don't want to think anyone's going to read it. I don't want people to read. So they have that fear. Yeah. I eliminated fear. And I said, you know, the way I started my store was very interesting. I was a stay-at-home dad for 10 years, and I was depressed, stressed. My oldest daughter is autistic, and I actually lost a lot of creative energy during that time period. We had therapists coming in the house 40 hours a week. So my first expression was music. I would just put out music there on YouTube, and I had a website. I would put that out, and then I got invited to New York to come perform. So I was like, okay, I took the little opportunities. Yes. And then by the time I was done, I was sitting in a room. This is a true story. But I was talking to God. I'm like, well, what am I going to do now that I got to re-enter the world? As I got all 3 of my daughters into school full time. And then I heard a voice. It just says, open up a store where you wrote all the books. And I began laughing. Wow. And I was like, I never, ever heard that. I never heard of a store like that before. But they didn't fit my character because I like I said, I dream without margins. So I was like, okay, let me try it. And I thought that it was going to be a joke. I thought people were going to just like laugh. I was opening it up and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna open up a store where I wrote all the books. And everybody was just looking like, what? But once I did it, it had like an effect that was like, whoa, people were like, oh my God, I've never ever seen or heard of this before. Anything like, so when people come into my store, it makes me smile because they're like, you did all of this stuff. But to me, it wasn't like a shock to me because that's stuff that I do every day. I would sit in my room when I was young and fill out an 80-page notebook just of poetry. I would sit on my knees like for hours all day long and finish one. And I could do it in like a day. I know it sounds weird, and I still have the notebooks, but I have so many ideas, even right now, that sometimes I have to like shut it off. Like, okay, but I don't want it to ever shut off until I'm done.
Wow.
I don't know. When I'm done, it could be 1,000 books. I don't know. It's like I got a lot.
So basically, you can write a book in a day.
Yeah, I can. I have done it. I basically right now I'm in between like 4 or 5 books, and they're all different.
Yeah.
Just my mind is different. But once I could tell you one thing, when I get writer's block, I start doing music. If I'm writing books and I can't think anymore, I jump into music.
Yeah.
And if I'm doing music and I can't think anymore, I jump into doing a film.
Yeah.
Or something,
Yeah.
you know? So it's like my gifts. And I tell people, whatever you do, just keep doing it. You're going to get better. You're going to perfect it. You're going to find different ways. Some people just do it for the money. You know, you want money at the end of the day, but I admire people like Dr. Dre in a sense of a business, and in a sense that I never really hear from Dr. Dre, but his music, and when you hear his name, it's revered, and you're like, oh, wow, Dr. Dre's working on something. And it's kind of like, you can't even get him out the house probably, you know, for, you know, $1 million. He'd probably still be like, I'm not moving for that. But his art speaks for itself. And I was like, I always want to be kind of like that. Like, they know I'm in my laboratory working on something.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I like to inspire people through my work. It's not just about me. I knew people would say, oh, it's, you know, it's so egotistical for you to have all this stuff that you just wrote. I'm like, no, it's not. It's actually a statement of value. When people go into your catalog, whoever you are, if we went to Beyonce could open up a store with just all her music. And, you know, people who are fans will go in there and be like, oh, I want to go visit Beyonce. It's a fan club. So why can't I, as an author, show my books? But they're also help books. I have people who used to call me every week and say, can you help me with a business plan? I said, sure. They kept missing their appointments. So I just created a business plan workbok where they could just buy it and create their own business plan. And then by the time they're done filling it out, they have a business plan. So I think of ways to do stuff like that. And it's always an idea that pops in my head. So I'm like, I just go with it.
You transitioned from a stay-at-home dad, as you said, and I'm looking at one of your books right now on the cover, and it's like the diary of a stay-at-home dad. Yeah. And so I would just love to hear how you transitioned from a stay-at-home dad to owning the bookstore, you know, in terms of the business aspect of it. How was that transition for you?
I was scared, you know, and the reason I say I was scared, I was frightened because I had a lot of businesses that failed. When I was 18 years old, I was in college, and I also took a entrepreneurship class, which stuck with me. And I was always into trying to own my business. I had a sole proprietorship at first. It was called DDS Productions. It failed. Then I had another business. When I was in college, I had another business called, it was a C4J Records. When I lived in Chicago, I went to Columbia College. And my major was in music and recording, like business. So I learned the businesses. It's just that they just kept failing. But one thing about it was when I transitioned into the Darick books, it was more like, okay, I want to get out of this house because I've been in here for 10 years. Mm-hmm. I want to get out the house. I don't know. I got to get out. You're so used to being at home, and people who are stay-at-home people, they do a lot of work. They're cleaning up. They're making sure they're setting the lunch, the dinner, the breakfast. They're picking the kids up from school. They're going to get. They're doing all that work, and then they try. So I was like, I got to transition from that to coming to a business. And it being brick and mortar in a time period where people are like, well, we just like digital. And I'm like, well, I want to be around people. That kind of pushed my position. I was like, I want to be around people. I want people to be able to come in and see my works as almost like a showcase. A lot of my customers, when they come in, we sit and talk for hours. And, we talk about everything from the mental health to, pushing them in the right direction. And it's like, that transition was hard for me for the first 6 months. I was frightened. I didn't even think, I'll be honest with you, I was like, oh goodness. Yeah, it's either, I put everything in it and it fails, because when I first opened my store, the pandemic hit when I first got my permit for occupancy. And I was like, wow, I'm not, I was like, this is crazy, but it really started to do well. And, the news kept coming in, and people were sharing stuff online, and I was just like, oh, it's working. I didn't know. I just walked by faith, and I was just like, sometimes you got to do that.
Yeah.
When you believe in yourself, a lot of times results don't happen at first. You got to keep going and keep going. One thing about it is you just cannot quit. Because if you quit, you'll live with that forever, knowing like, man, what would I want to do? What am I, what could I have done? And then it makes me happy. Like I didn't like my kids seeing me. And I talk about that in my book, The Diary of a Stay-at-Home Dad, which is my latest release, is the stories, lessons, and ramen noodles. And it's an honest portrait of 10 years of me being at home. It has journals in there that I wrote when I was very depressed or different things that I went through as a parent, not being the breadwinner at the time, struggling with money and it's like, I was just like, all right, but in my first year, stepping out, I did great, and I was like, oh, shoot, I did it. And I didn't fail. And I've been here for 4 years. And before I have to tell you this, I have to share this with you. Before I opened my store, it was like a dream or maybe a vision that I was all over every news outlet, just telling my story. It was weird, but I wasn't doing it for that reason. And since then, people tell me all the time, we always see you on the news. We always see you on the news. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy, because that was my vision. I'm like, so that's how I transitioned. I just believed in myself. I had to teach myself how to sit in the store for hours, because I wanted to get up and get out. But then I really taught myself while I was there to work. I was like, when I'm in here, I want people to come in and be like, oh, I saw Darick. I came in and he was working on a book, or he was working on some music. And it inspires people, like he stayed on his post and he's working, so that's how I did it.
Yeah, no, that's an amazing story, because we've had so many entrepreneurs, Black entrepreneurs on this podcast, Darick, who've basically said to me, in terms of the financial aspect of setting up their business, that they weren't able to get in the beginning, right? When they were just starting, they weren't able to get loans. They weren't able to get investors, that it was just hard for Black entrepreneurs to access those financing options in the same way as other people were. And so they talked about these challenges and the ways that they overcame them. Did you encounter any of these barriers while you were setting up your business? And what are some of the things that you think people can do, like Black creators who might be thinking of launching a business and are thinking, well, what do I do if I can't access, this type of financing or that type of money? Any advice for them?
Well, my advice is always ways to do it. And I'm going to say this: set your business up. They say build it and they'll come. I remember the Field of Dreams thing. My first year, I got a lot of grants. I got it was crazy. And it was the first time that I had applied for grants as a business. And I got I got close to like $100,000 in grants my first year.
Amazing. Yeah.
And it was crazy because I would hear about a grant. I was applying. I applied for like 50, 60 grants and ended up getting like 7 or 8 of them, but they amounted to that much. And I just kept pushing in that area. And then, of course you have issues with banks, but I learned this. If you're having issues with banks, because banks is all about cash flow. And the lady at the bank was like, oh, Darick, it's just all about cash flow. And I was like, okay, cool. So I built a relationship with her, but she would tell me stuff. But one thing I learned is that they have organizations who actually I'm working with right now, and they work with small businesses. They work with businesses in the community, and they have access to money for if you want to do loans. They have access to grants. You have to find these places in the local and invite them. Hey, come to my business. You know what I would do? If I had a news clip, I would send them my news clip. Hey, they just did something on my business. Oh, wow, that's great. And they will make them more like, this person's really doing something. We can help them secure some money. That's what I did. And that's what I do. And it's more like when people come in, sometimes customers will come in that have access. You never know who you're talking to. That's why regardless, I smile at everyone. I treat everyone fair. I treat everyone right. This one guy came in my store, Black guy, and he's like, man, I work with all white people. And I was in the meeting and they were talking about you and your bookstore. And he was like, I've never heard people just, white people talk about a Black guy like this. And I was like, really? I had no clue. I was like, wow, that's good. That's a good thing. And that right there opened up a door for me to get business, because they wanted to partner with me and do business with me at their facility. So, just keep putting out the best things and looking for those opportunities. The SBA, they had some things going, but I would really say, check your local Like they have micro loans. If you're trying to do micro loans and they have a lot of people in your area, don't be afraid to approach these smaller companies because they still can give loans or grants up to like $250,000 or $300,000, you know, and take that and really just learn it and grow your business. And like next week, I still go to conferences. Next week, I'm going to a conference for exporting because I'm into exporting now and exporting. And they actually have the people there that give grant money and all this that. So I'm going to go there and shake hands. I'll probably be the only Black person there, but I'm going to go there, shake hands, smile. Hi, my name is Darick. You know what I mean? And introduce myself, and speak confident about your business. Don't be weary that you haven't made the money yet. You know what I mean? And it's like, it will come. You know, sometimes you may scrape and struggle for a few years or whatever, you know, but once everything comes, even when you have a lot of money, you're still going to have to do things like, you know, restructure things, and you're still going to have to make decisions and all this and that. You're still going to have those things, but you're able just to learn from with the small that you have so you could do better with the great that you get.
Absolutely. And so, Darick, you have a book. You have another one of your titles is Darick's Laws of Success. It's a guide to being prosperous in business and life. And I just wanted you, because you mentioned so many things just now, right, that are so important for entrepreneurs, like we'll keep on learning, lifelong learning, which is also, you know, a big part of holistic wealth. And I'm sure you have lots more, but can you just tell us like a few from like these laws of success for being prosperous in business and in life? I thought that was a great segue into getting into some of this stuff.
I talk about believing in yourself. In the first chapter, I talk about you are the brand. You know, learning that you're the brand. When you walk outside, you are the brand. Regardless, I'm Darick Books everywhere that I go. You know, so I represent that brand. You know, I have resilience. That's a law of being able to bounce back. You have to be able to bounce back because you're going to have times when it's horrible, you know, and you're going to have times where you're like, man, that didn't work. But that don't mean you failed. If it just mean it didn't work, you just have to restructure it or re-strategize and go back at it. The fire that burns, you know, I talk about keeping that fire burning. These are just my laws and that has gotten me through because keeping that fire burning, I tell people, I've gotten mad and quit for like 5 minutes and then I got back and that fire burnt more. Yeah. You know, I got, you know, chapter that talks about preparation, success steps, you know, talking about, you know, learning how to handle the little bit that you have so that when you get more, you know how to be able to deal with that.
Absolutely.
No game for free. A lot of times, and I don't mean not that you don't give promo and stuff like that, promotion, but sometimes we don't value our work, so we just give it away for free.
Yeah.
Somebody told me this once, you know, it was a wise guy, older guy. He said, if you don't put a price on it, we won't think that it's worth anything, you know? And it's like a lot of times we just give it away. Hey, I've seen people, I get on my friend, he's in the fashion industry, and he used to just give shirt. I'm like, no, I want to pay for it. Well, I don't care how much it is. Let me pay for it, you know? Like, because I tell people your whole value could change if you were sitting in a place if I was sitting in a place selling a t-shirt and everybody walked past, but one guy walked up to me and said, hey, I want that t-shirt. And he gave me $1,000. I instantly would value my t-shirt at $1,000. Like, oh my God, someone just bought it for $1,000. So I would raise my price and I would have raised my confidence because I'm like, hey, somebody valued it at $1,000, so I'm not going to take, you know what I mean? So you have to be, you know, that person also letting you know what's the value. When I talk about sacrifice, you have to sacrifice. You definitely have to sacrifice, you know, time. And I don't look at it as a bad thing. I mean, I've sat in my store for hours. And before that, I've written all my life. And those things, sacrifice teaches you patience. It teaches you how to not be super anxious when you're in a room selling your stuff. Some people take the first thing that's offered to them. I learned that, and I did car salesman for like a week or two, and they were like, "Oh, we always give them the first price we give them is usually just, you know, we just see if they're gonna take it, but they have a number that they're gonna go way down. But if you just take the first one, you know, you can't go back and forth with it. And then I have a lot. The book is great. Like the book talks about, I give 22 P's of building success. You know, persistence, perseverance, pride, process, progress. You know, product, prep, positivity, position, promotion. There's a lot more. I mean, the book is a good book to read to position yourself no matter what you do. Because a lot of times we need a reality check and we need some motivation. And a lot of my books are motivational in that, and showing, hey, man, these are laws of success. If you keep these laws, no matter how big you get or no matter, how you could be a billionaire, millionaire, thousandaire, you can grow and you can also find happiness in life, because happiness and being happy and content with it is probably the most important.
Yeah, absolutely, Darick. And there's so many lessons that you shared just now, which are so critical, especially for Black creators who are facing a lot more barriers than usual. And will have those uphill struggles, those moments of wanting to give up, those moments of wondering and second guessing, am I going to make it? Are they going to take me seriously? So a lot of these lessons are so, so important. And so I just wanted to ask you too, we discussed the financial aspect of it, which is so important, especially for creators, right? Who often struggle, whether it's with music or film or books, often struggle, especially in the early days. And so important to get the financial aspect of it right. And in my book, Holistic Wealth, I spoke about knowing and embracing your personal financial identity, because it's so important as an entrepreneur to, especially when you're starting out and you're building a business and you want to build that empire. And of course, when you want to have so many different product lines, or you want to go out and export like what you're doing. And so, Darick, I know you took the personal financial identity quiz, and I'd love to hear your results and what's your philosophy in terms of finances.
Okay, so my result was I'm a minimalist. And I laughed. I'm like, I'm a minimalist? I'm like, what? Because when I thought about minimalist, and I watch TV shows too, where they have the guy or the woman who has they can take one bag or they can live in a small, tiny house. And I'm like, I need room. Yeah. I need to be able to change the shirts every day. But one thing about me is, I guess the minimalist in me is I won't go out and buy a t-shirt for $500. No, I'm thinking I can go to Walmart and grab some t-shirts, and create my own t-shirts, that I can wear every single day, for less than $100. So I don't really care. I'm not one of those people, and I never have been one of those people who I got on $4,000 jeans and $200 shoes. No. I don't really care to buy. Now, if it's something that, we all have some things that we like, I'll pay for that if I'll buy that or whatever. Yeah. But I'm not really super materialistic in the fashion of expensive, I got to hop out the most expensive car. I gotta, I'm more if it drives and it's cool, it's nice. All right, cool, I drive it. So I wouldn't say I'm afraid of finances, but of course we all have those moments where, we check the bank, make sure we got everything in. I just make sure my priorities are correct. Yeah. I never want to be financially stressed. And I know what I mean by that is I was watching an interview once with Will Smith, and I remember I admire Will, whatever. He was saying that he has a lot of money in the bank, but he's still scared every day. He wakes up scared because he thinks he's going to be broke. I don't ever want to live like that. I want to be so I don't want to ever, that's the part of contentment and being, I don't want that fear, because you could be a billionaire and live in you can't go to sleep every night. I don't want to ever be that way. So I think people should really analyze what financial situation they want to be in. Do they want to be financially, free of, I want to own everything I have. That's me. I want to own everything I have. I don't want to own anyone else. I don't, of course, small utilities, whatever. I don't want to owe any man. I want to own all my stuff. I want to be able to do whatever I want to do, whenever I want to do it. And, that's it. That's basically my definition of financial freedom.
Absolutely. And you're so exactly right about financial anxiety. It can hit anyone, regardless of your net worth. Celebrities suffer from financial anxiety. It's such an important topic too. And something that you mentioned that's also important is just knowing how to manage your finances so that, you can sleep well at night. And Darick, just before we wrap up, I just wanted to ask you this, and it's because your work is so prolific and you have so much in terms of a body of work out there. Self-publishing can get expensive, especially if you're self-publishing multiple titles. How did you keep those costs down so that you could make a profit on each of your titles?
So let me give you an example. If I self-publish and partner like with Amazon or something like that, first of all, I told you like only ISBN, your copyright, all that stuff like that. I would set a price. So as an author, you could get your author copies can be a certain price that's not high to you. Mm-hmm. But you set your price, and a lot of people have problems setting their own price. So when I went into setting prices on my books, I wrote in all of that. Like I was like, all right, so I want to make sure I make back the money that I paid for the book, plus some, and maybe even include tax and shipping, and what I value my book to be. And I will put the price on there. And anytime I sell a book, I make my money back over and over and over, like hand over fist, you know what I mean? Way over. Mm-hmm. And actually, I was talking to a banker and he was like, he never saw that big of a profit margin on books before. And I'm like, well, that's how I wanted to change the industry. That's the gap that I saw. Yeah. I said, I saw people not taking books as serious. And I was like, one time when somebody came in my store, they said, I don't look at your books as books. I look at them as works of art. And instantly I thought of like, a lot of Basquiat, I don't know if I'm saying his name, or different people that sell their art and people buy it at such astronomical prices because they value the art. And I said, that's how I'm going to do my books. Yeah. So I'm able to make my money like in significant ways. And one thing I learned, and this is what I want to just inspire people out there, is that don't flinch at your price. I was reading a book about a guy. When I first started my store, I forget the name of the book, but it was a guy in Philly, or somebody in Philly was selling subs or something like for $100, and people laughed. But I think the place still exists to this day. Celebrities found out, people who like to spend a lot of money, found out how much this sandwich was, and they would buy the sandwich at $100.
Wow.
And I was like, that's me. I'm not going to flinch. And I haven't had anyone come in and say, oh, that's too high. I've had people come in when they look at my price, they ask for 2 or 3. Let me get some more, and I'm like, oh, okay, okay. Or when a school buys books, they don't even ask for a wholesale price. They buy it at the actual price that I set. And I think it's because of my confidence in what I'm doing, and I put my heart, mind, body, and soul into what I do. And I always really am trying to help someone. So it's like you could go to McDonald's and buy something for $15, eat, and it's gone out your system in a couple hours. But you go buy a book and you can have that forever as long as you keep it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's such great advice for creators listening in terms of pricing their products and profit margins and making sure that they actually benefit from their work, right? Which is huge. Thank you so much, Darick, for sharing.
Thank you so much, Keisha. You are so wonderful. I read your story and everything. You are such an amazing person. I was so excited to speak to you. And you are very inspirational. I was on your website 2 days in a row, I'll admit it. This lady is so inspirational. You are, if I could say, you are a queen and you are great.
Thank you so much for sharing that about my story. And it's just amazing when you get to connect with other creators and, really inspire each other. And I'm so inspired by your work too. And I'm sure the listeners are inspired right now. And so before I let you go, can you tell listeners where to find you on social media, your website?
Definitely. You go to my website. My bookstore is Darick Books, and that's DARICK books.com. So DarickBooks.com. And Darick Spears, DARICK, Spears, SPEARS.com. And I have links to my social media on there. You can just go to Darick Spears on Facebook or Darick Books. I'm all over. And my Facebook is /artistDDS. I also have a Darick Books. Just look me up and send me messages. I have a lot of interesting books. Keep supporting. The Diary of a Stay-at-Home Dad is a great book, for anyone. Also, The Darick Laws of Success. And I have a character, I have to tell you about him. He's going to be big. He's going to be bigger than Mickey Mouse. His name is Bookworm. And I have comic books that he's actually based off of me. And we go into the schools and the kids love Bookworm. I go into schools on every Friday and even in the summer, and I talk to students who love and are inspired by Bookworm. And education. So we're pushing Bookworm. And
I saw that too. On the store website, and it looks amazing. And that's so great, that work that you're doing in schools. I have 3 kids, so I know how important that is too as a mom, and that work is priceless that you do. And thank you so much for that work and for joining us today, Darick.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us this week on Holistic Wealth with Keisha Blair. Make sure to visit our website, KeishaBlair.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or via RSS, so you will never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too. Are you a member of the Institute on Holistic Wealth? If not, what are you waiting for? Go to Institute on Holistic Wealth /memberships to choose your membership plan and join. As a member, you get so many perks. Free worksheets, advice, coaching, and a member's workshop to design an intentionally designed life. You need to figure out your life purpose? Take the Build Your Life Purpose Portfolio online self-paced course. You're struggling with all your money decisions? Take the free financial identities quiz and then take the course. You recently had a breakup, job loss, or experienced the death of a loved one? Take the Holistic Healing course. You need an overall plan to achieve holistic wealth? We will help you figure out your holistic wealth blueprint. And of course, if you want to start making money by helping others achieve holistic wealth, become a certified holistic wealth consultant. Regardless of what career you've got, the Institute will show you how to increase your income and walk in your purpose. The sooner you join, the sooner you start to achieve a more holistically wealthy lifestyle. And you're going to want to stay for a very long time. So go to Institute on Holistic Wealth /memberships to join. If you haven't read the book yet, pick up a copy of the award-winning, best-selling Holistic Wealth 32 Life Lessons to help you find purpose, prosperity, and happiness.